Okay, first of all, everyone, I want to say Happy New Year on behalf of Catch the Next, and I hope that we are all surviving and getting through the first week or second week, depending on where you are. I am coming to you from Iowa, which is under about a foot of snow right now and growing. So it could be worse. How about that? So my name is Erin Doran. I serve as the Director of Research and Evaluation for Catch the Next. I am the one who helps put together this webinar series, and I'm very, very excited to introduce my colleagues, Dr. Joan Jaimes of San Antonio College and Dr. Stacy Ybarra, who's at Our Lady of the Lake. And they have put together a presentation of extremely timely information about the significant updates that have been implemented recently for the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and the TASFA, which is the Texas application for free student aid. As always, I think my colleagues would probably agree that when you get individual, very specific student questions about their financial aid status, you should always, always, always tell them to go to the financial aid office. Joanne is nodding vigorously. Always defer to your colleagues in the financial aid office who have that specialized training and knowledge and access to student information that you probably don't have access to. But it's also a very, very good idea for faculty, advisors, administrators to at least know the basics of this information. And I think for Stacy in particular, I want to shout her out as someone who is incredibly adept at finding free money, grant money, scholarship money for our students. So if you have not connected with Stacy before, I strongly recommend that you do, because she is a wealth of knowledge around finding financial aid for our students. And so with that, I am going to go ahead and kick it off to my colleagues. Dr. Jaimes, Dr. Ybarra.
Thank you. Well, I'm Joanne Jaimes. Thank you everyone for being here. And I will go ahead and start sharing my screen once Dr. Ybarra introduces herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Stacy Ybarra. I also work at Our Lady of the Lake University, where I'm the Director of the Center for Teaching Excellence. I've been here for 2 years. I served with the Alamo Colleges for 20 in a capacity of higher education advocate, advising, all that jazz. I'm also a part-time adjunct at SAC. And so if you need any help with financial aid, reach out to me and I'll be here. Dr. Jaimes is going to go over the first part, which is FAFSA, and I'll be working on the
Thank you. All right, can everybody see my screen? Great.
Yes.
So here is a little bit about the agenda. So we're going to talk about types and sources of financial aid. We're going to talk about essential information about the FAFSA. We're going to talk about some key changes from last year's FAFSA to this better FAFSA. That's the slogan for FSA this year. We're going to talk a little bit about the appeal process, and I'm going to show you some resources. Just so that we know who all is here in the chat, if you all can tell us your role, what you do at your institution, that would help us to gear our future professional development sessions. So for types of financial aid, there are grants, loans, student employment, and scholarships. The majority of what we are going to talk about today is geared towards undergraduate students. Because Catch the Next serves community colleges in Texas, most of this information is geared towards Texas students. And let me give you a little bit about my background. I am the Director of Teaching and Learning here at San Antonio College, and I also work with Ascender, our Ascender learning communities here at SAC. Before coming to Texas, I was in Washington, D.C., serving as awareness and outreach specialist for federal student aid for a few years. So that actually Friday, 7 years ago, I was doing a FAFSA webinar. So it takes me back to my days at DC. let me get back to my slides. And sources of financial aid. So we're going to be talking about federal and state financial aid today. But there are also other sources of financial aid, including their colleges and universities. They may have scholarships. There are private sources like other scholarships from private donors, and employers like HEB has scholarships, Denny's, Haku has scholarships. So there are very many different sources of financial aid for our students. Federal Student Aid Financial Aid Program. So Federal Student Aid has Pell Grants, and this year the lifetime eligibility, the Pell Grant is up to $7,395. The FSEOG grant is up to $4,000. The Teach grant is $3,772, and then each individual school varies for the work study awards. And then for loans, for direct student loans, it varies between $3,500 to $12,500, and this is at the undergrad level. Again, this changes once students reach the graduate level. And then the Parent Plus loans also varies. At any time, if you all have any questions, please stop me. I'd be glad to answer any questions. And if you all, Dr. Doran and Dr. Ybarra, if you all see any questions that you need to interrupt me in the chat, please do so. So today we're going to talk about the FAFSA and the TASFA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. This is the application that U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens should complete to apply for federal student aid. And if they have a Social Security number, they can complete the FAFSA online, which is the easiest and fastest way to fill it out. After my presentation, Dr. Ybarra is going to talk a little bit about the TASFA for students who are otherwise not eligible for FAFSA in the state of Texas. The free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA, collects student and parent income, tax, assets, and household information. Then it calculates the student aid index. And we're going to have a section on definitions. The student aid index, the SAI, is now what we used to call the EFC. That 64-page formula is now the SAI. And this is a measure of the family's financial strength. Need-based student financial aid from federal government, state government, colleges, and universities. So the FAFSA is used for all of this. And sometimes students or families feel, well, I make too much money, so what's the use of completing the FAFSA? Many institutions, including some scholarships, require the FAFSA even if you don't qualify for Pell Grants. So that's why it is important for students to complete it. Also, federal student aid gets their money based on how many FAFSAs were completed. So this is something that students don't understand, and I don't care how much outreach is being done by an institution, more is needed. More outreach is needed on the importance of completing the FAFSA. Which year's information is recorded. So for the new FAFSA that just launched on December 30th, it will be the tax return information from 2022 that we just filed in April of 23. That FAFSA will, we are going to use the assets reported as of the date of the FAFSA is filed. So if we file the FAFSA this weekend or January 24th during our SAC FAFSA night, we are going to use the assets that we have today. For income, we are going to use the income from the tax return of 2022. We should not substitute our income from 2023, the one where we're just getting our W-2 forms. We should not use that on the 24-25 FAFSA. I'm going to talk a little bit later about how, if your situation has changed, how you update that with your college's financial aid office. When do we file the FAFSA? The FAFSA should launch every year on October 1st. And every student should start completing their FAFSA on October 1st or after during their senior year in high school and every year they're in school. Again, the 24-25 FAFSA is the form to complete now, and this is for financial aid to help pay for college during July 1st, 24 of June 30, 25. So the seniors that are going to graduate in May of this year should be completing the FAFSA now so that they can go to college in August. This year, because it's the better FAFSA, federal student aid took a little bit longer than October 1st to launch it, and it launched on December 30th. Supposedly every year we will start launching again on October 1st. So let's keep our fingers crossed. FAFSAs that have already been submitted after December 30th are still being processed, and I know that because I helped my daughter Juliana complete her FAFSA, and we have not received confirmation of the SAI. According to their emails, this should be processed by late January. FSA ID, we are still using the FSA ID, which used to be the PIN number. The FSA ID is a digital signature, and it's used for many reasons on many forms for federal student aid, including the FAFSA, the master promissory notes. Every year when we log in to renew our public service loan forgiveness application or employer verification form, and every person creates their own FSA ID. It's a personal transaction. We should not complete the FSA ID application for our students, and our students should not complete the FSA ID application for the parents. But nobody knows if they do. Anyways, one new thing that I'm going to talk about further later on in the presentation is that parents who do not have a Social Security number can now create an FSA ID to digitally sign their students' FAFSA. Some common mistakes that we see a lot with the FSA ID is that the Social Security numbers are switched. Sometimes the student puts in the parent's Social Security number when they're creating their own FSA ID, or vice versa. Now it's a lot easier to log in with a verified mobile phone number. Years ago, it used to be that you had to actually talk to a person at FISAC to reset the password. But now it's a lot easier to log in if the student has already verified their mobile phone number on studentaid.gov. But there's always the Forfeit Aid or the FISAC Center to help us if we get stuck with our FSA ID or any other question. Again, like Dr. Doran said, if it's a specific question about your financial aid, the best place to get answers is at each institution or each college's financial aid office. These have been some common errors noted on this year's Better FAFSA. We are very used to going really fast, next, submit. And we sometimes do not read each page carefully. So it's important that we read each page carefully to make sure that we know what they're asking for. It's important to get to read all definitions carefully. At every stage in the FAFSA, there is a way to hover over to get definitions for whatever terminology is new or unknown. So read that if you're not sure about what it's asking. Do not confuse student with parent information. There has been many people who have made the mistake. There's even TikTok videos about this already, where the student is filling out their part and they answer no when it talks about a contributor. And then it says, are you sure you only want to apply for federal student loans? And that is very confusing because that means that they are skipping their parents' information as if their parents are not submitting their own information as the parent. So then they don't qualify for Pell Grants, and then they have to go to the college to reset that and get that corrected. So please make sure that you read everything very carefully. Do not switch child support paid with child support received. So read that carefully. Do not report the value of qualified retirement plans or family primary residence as assets. The family home where they live is not an asset. It doesn't count as an asset. Your home over on the lake and at the Hamptons or wherever your second home or third or fourth or your investment properties, those are assets, but not your family principal residence. Do not report 529 college savings plans based on the beneficiary instead of the owner. So if the student themselves is not the owner, you should not report it. Other common errors on the FAFSA are double check all basic demographic items. I don't know if you all remember, but it used to be where you had to make sure that your name and your street address was entered exactly as you entered it on your tax return last year so that the IRS retrieval tool will work. Well, now there won't be an alert telling you we're going to the IRS website. Get out now if you don't want to go to the IRS. You just have to make sure that everything is entered exactly the same and that you're double checking all of your demographic information. And we'll talk more about the IRS retrieval tool because actually now you can't enter a FAFSA without agreeing to the IRS. You cannot enter your tax information manually. So that's a huge change. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Here are some basic summary of key changes on this new FAFSA. There are fewer FAFSAs selected for verification. And again, in my 15 years of experience, each college blames federal student aid. No, it depends on the college and the institution, but hopefully this year there will be fewer FAFSAs selected for verification. Paid preparation is no longer permitted. Online FAFSA is available in 11 of the most commonly spoken language in the US. Students can list up to 20 colleges now. And then if they decide they can go, they want to go to 21st college, they could come back and remove one of them and put in the new one. And the number of questions has dropped from 108 to 46 questions. Some of the questions that have been removed are housing choice, selective service, drug conviction, and taxable income questions. So that's good news for us. There is also more financial aid available for single parent households. So for example, dependent students with just one parent and independent students who are single parents may qualify for more financial aid. More student and parent income will be sheltered from the financial aid formula, and there will be greater eligibility for the maximum federal Pell Grant. Single parent adjusted gross income less than 225% of the poverty guideline, and not single parent adjusted gross income less than 175% of the poverty guideline. Also, there is more flexibility if students or families have received some sort of means tested benefits from the government. They are also more sheltered in their assets to qualify for financial aid. There is less aid for middle income and high income families, so that's not so good news. There's a shift in focus away from cash flow to a slightly greater emphasis on wealth. And there's also less aid for families with multiple children in college. So now there is not the question of how many students are in college. That question is no longer there. So that means the number of children in college at the same time will no longer affect the eligibility for federal student aid. That has a small impact on low-income families, but a bigger impact on middle and high-income families. New questions which will not affect eligibility, but are used for statistical purposes by the Department of Education is students' gender, male, female, non-binary, or another gender, or prefer not to answer. And then is the student transgender? Yes, no, or prefer not to answer. And then is the student Hispanic, Latino, or of Spanish origin? So again, these do not affect student eligibility. They are for statistical purposes only. There are changes to reportable income. Cash types of untaxed income that will no longer be reported in the Better FAFSA is cash support and other money paid on students' behalf, veterans' education benefits, and workmen's compensation. So that's good news for a lot of our students. Gifts to students are also not going to be counted. Distributions from 529 college savings plans owned by a non-custodial parent or grandparent will no longer affect financial aid eligibility. And then child support received will no longer be counted as income. Instead, it is counted as an asset. All assets are considered in the formula. There has been an elimination of small business and family farm exclusion. So those will be counted in reportable assets to calculate the student aid need. Other changes to reportable assets, there's a simplified needs test, which is now known as applicants exempt from asset reporting. So if the family income is less than 60,000, or if anyone in the applicant's household received certain means tested federal benefits in the last 2 years, they are exempt from reporting any assets. Which parent must complete the FAFSA? This is the most popular question that we always get. These are the guidelines. These are not the law. These are the guidelines. These are not the law for people that don't break the law. When parents are divorced, separated, or never married and do not live together, only one parent must complete the FAFSA. The parent who provides more financial support to the student. Not always the parent that lives with this, that the student lives with the most, is who should complete the FAFSA. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Perfectly clear. The parent who provides the more financial support to the student is who completes the FAFSA. Now, we don't know where the student lives. I'll just leave that there, okay? If you all have questions, you can message me privately. If this parent has remarried as of the date the FAFSA is filed, the step parent's income, assets, and dependents must be reported on the FAFSA. So, yeah, that's another change. Family size is something else that changed for this Better FAFSA. Family size is now based on students' parents, and any dependents of the student's parents that were added in this section of the dependents on the FAFSA is the family size. So I'm seeing in the chat, do they get to decide what parent to put on the FAFSA if they pay 50-50? Yes. As a mom, in my experience, not always, I cannot generalize. As a mom, I've seen that moms who have ¿cómo se dice? ¿Cómo se dice when you have when you take care of your children in a divorce?
Custody.
Ándale,
When
custody.
you are the custodial parent.
Sí, custodial parent or custody. You can't buy that with money. So, in my opinion, that is the parent that supported the student the most. Anyways, this is family size, and yes, they get to decide who they put in the as the parent. There is new terminology. So the acronyms have changed. The contributor. Now the parent is also known as a contributor. So this refers to anyone asked to provide information on a student's FAFSA. Consent. All students and contributors must provide consent for federal tax data to be transferred, used, and shared. No consent, no federal student aid. So there is no put your tax information manually anymore. And now SAI and OFA are new acronyms. Expected family contribution used to be EFC, and changes to student aid index. So EFC is now known as SAI, and estimated financial assistance, EFA, changes to other financial assistance, OFA. There's a question. Question about family size. If grandparents are in another country, but on the taxes as dependents, do they count towards the household size? Yes. If they are in that section on the tax return, yes, they are part of the family. They are part of the family. Now, like me, where my child, my 26-year child is in another country, she's my dependent, but she's not my dependent on my tax return. So unfortunately, that decreases my family size to 4. So, but yes, if they are on the tax return, they are part of the family as dependents. Okay, so let's go to the contributor section. New terminology for the Better FAFSA. A student's or parents' answers on the FAFSA form will determine which contributor, if any, will be required to provide information. So there's still the dependency questions to help the student determine if they need any information from a contributor. Students or parents invite contributors to complete their portion of the FAFSA by entering their contributor's name, date of birth, social security number, and email address. And then contributors must provide personal and financial information in their own section. They log in separately of the student's FAFSA form, but they are not financially responsible for the student's education costs. Again, just because they are the parents dependent on the tax return and they assist with completing the FAFSA, they are not financially responsible. All of our students who are 18 years of age or older, they are responsible. And that's why my opinion is that parents should not take out Parent Plus loans. That's my opinion. More terminology about contributors for independent students. Other students can continue to be considered independent students on the 24-25 FAFSA and will not be required to have their parents be contributors. So for this Better FAFSA, this 24-25 award year, an independent student is born before January 1st, 2001, married and not separated, is a graduate or professional student, is a veteran or a member of the armed forces, or is orphan, is a ward of the court or has ever been a ward of the court since the age of 13, some with legal dependents other than a spouse. So if somebody has a child, they are independent. Is an emancipated minor. So emancipated means divorced from their parents. Someone who is unaccompanied and homeless, and sleeping on your friend's couch is homeless. Someone who is self-supporting or at risk of being homeless. They are all considered independent. Other new terminology about consent. If a student or the parent or contributor doesn't provide to consent to have their federal tax information transferred, then the student will not be eligible for federal student aid, even if they manually enter tax information into the FAFSA. So they must provide consent. If you are a married student, I have questions in the chat. If you are a married student, do you have to include your spouse's information? Yes. Yes, you do. Will an older brother be considered as contributor if their sibling lives in their household, if the parents live outside the US? No, it has to be their parent. If the parents live outside the US, gee, that's a hard one. The way it used to be done is the parents completed their own portion with their own income information. But if they didn't file US tax return, that's going to be a tricky one. If the sibling has, gee, I don't know. If the sibling is the custodial person and has included them as dependents, that may be a possibility, but that gets into legality. So that would be a question for your financial aid office. Sorry. Homeless status. Is that something that the institution would select for verification? We will get to that, but supposedly there should be less verification and there shouldn't be any questions asked about the reason why a student is homeless, unaccompanied, or why their parents don't talk to them. Again, in my experience, we leave professional judgment to the institutions, and unfortunately, it's like the more paper they collect, the happier they are, in my experience. So yeah, unfortunately, it depends on whatever the school requests. Other things that changed in consent, information about how federal tax information will be used and the consequences of not providing consent will be included in the FAFSA. So if a student or parent does not want to contribute, there will be more information on how that affects their eligibility for federal student aid. Here are the steps for contributors, but a lot of this is not true yet because again, we completed my daughter's FAFSA on January 1st. I did not illegally log in for my daughter. Don't think I did that. She was right next to me. Step 1, contributor receives an email information that they've been identified as a contributor. I never received my email because of my OCD. I just kept logging in, and I finally was in my queue. Step 2, the contributor uses or creates a studentaid.gov or FSA ID account. The contributor then logs into their account using their FSA ID, and then they will see there's a pending action. Step 4, contributor reviews information about completing their action on the FAFSA, and literally it took us 10 minutes to do Juliana's part, and then once I was able to log in, because it kept going down and down and down, it took me 5 minutes to do my part, because it had all my information was correct. So all I had to do was give permission for them to go into the IRS website. And step 5, contributor provides required information on the student's FAFSA. Being a contributor does not implicate financial responsibility. However, if a required contributor refuses to provide their information, then the student will be ineligible for federal student aid. And there's a little detail about that, because then the student may be considered independent if the parent wants to be mean like that. Thank you. Consent. All students and contributors must be, thank you, Stacy. Okay. So she looked for the answer. Yes, if you are a married student, you must include your spouse's information. Okay. And the other question about the older brother, if the parent lives in another country. No, an older brother who lives in the same household as a student whose parents live outside of the US will not be considered a contributor on the FAFSA. Only the legal parents or step parents. In this case, then the student may be able to claim that he is independent. But again, this depends on the school. Again, let's go back to the presentation. All students and contributors must have or create an FSA ID. So it's a username and password. All students and contributors will use their own FSA ID to sign their part in the student's FAFSA. And this includes the username and password. Contributors without a Social Security number can still create an FSA ID as of this new FAFSA. And it used to be where a student who is a US citizen, if they had a parent without a Social Security number, the student could sign the FAFSA electronically, but then they had to print out the signature page, give it to their parents to sign with ink and mail it in for processing. That's not the case anymore. Now the parent can apply for an FSA ID even without a Social Security number. So that really helps. It also used to be where if parents illegally in the state of Florida, I knew of several institutions where parents did not have a Social Security number and the students were US citizens and the college was not allowing them to apply for federal student aid. That should never be the case. As of today, a student must be a US citizen or eligible non-citizen to receive federal student aid. That is still the case. The status of their parents does not matter. Student aid index. So this is what we used to know as the EFC, the expected family contribution. Again, estimated financial assistance will change to other financial assistance, and the expected family contribution will now be known as SAI, or Student Aid Index. And the formula is not that easy as it looks right here, but basically it is the cost of attendance, COA, minus Student Aid Index, SAI, minus other financial assistance like scholarships or whatever, OFA equals need. And that's the need, the orange, is how they determine the Pell Grants or the loans. Emergency aid will no longer reduce the student's other financial assistance. So again, emergency aid, like the emergency aid we got for COVID, will no longer affect the other financial assistance. The SAI is a number that is used to determine eligibility for need-based aid. It is calculated using information that the student and the contributors provide on the FAFSA. So for many scholarships, the FAFSA is required, but many of those scholarships are not need-based. So it's important to remember that for parents who think that they are over an income limit. The SAI will replace the EFC starting in this 24-25 school year. So that would be, will an outside scholarship be an OFA? So when they are completing the FAFSA, it asks many scholarships let's look that up. Stacy, can you help me look that up, if an outside scholarship will be counted?
Yes, I will. I'll look it up.
Okay. Now the EFC or the SAI can be a negative number if there are more expenses and not enough income or assets. It could be up to negative 1,500. So again, cost of attendance minus student aid index minus OFA or other financial assistance is how need is determined to come up with a financial aid award. Here are some cost of attendance changes. There are one of two major changes. Room and board changed to food and housing, but then food and housing is now grouped together as living expenses. Transportation expenses include travel between campus, students' home, and work. So that is major because people live far away, sometimes in other states. The second change, students enrolled less than half time. This may include components not expressly prohibited by law. So I can give you an example, but we're being recorded. So for example, if there is research being done on a trip, other things like that, if it's not against the law, if the student is enrolled less than full time because they're working, they're a parent, whatever the case may be, this also affects and impacts the cost of attendance. Another benefit now is cost to obtain licensure and certification will no longer be just one time. Incarcerated students have an expanded consumer information requirement, and also the SAI can be a negative number. Loan fees will be included in the COA, but loan fees for private student loans will no longer be included. So federal Pell Grant eligibility will be determined in 3 steps again. And I think we already went through this of how the need is determined. So I'm looking at the time, and we also need to allow Stacy. So once federal student aid processes the FAFSA, we used to receive the SAR, or the student aid report. Now it's going to be called the FSS, FAFSA Submission Summary. Basically, this is going to be sent electronically to the student by email, and it will include basically everything that they may qualify for. But the real financial aid offer will come from the college. Only after the student applies or is a student at said college. So they won't receive a financial aid offer from the 20 colleges if they have not applied at the 20 colleges. So here's information about professional judgment categories. There's new policies and provisions related to professional judgments and dependency. So special circumstances versus unusual circumstances. Financial aid administrators must consider all professional judgment requests, all of them, and should not say that they did not receive it if there's proof that they have. They should accept prior determinations of independence. So if the student was already independent last year, they do not need to request further verification of independent status. And there are updates to acceptable documentation. So the difference between special circumstances versus unusual circumstances are listed here. Basically, special circumstances are financial situations leading to changes to data elements in the cost of attendance or the EFC calculation. Student aid, I don't remember what it was. Unusual circumstances are conditions leading to changes that lead to changes of students' dependency. For example, human trafficking, refugee or asylee status, parental abandonment, unable to contact parents, all of these. So those are the difference of types of professional judgment calls that are left to the judgment of the financial aid administrator. Special circumstances versus unusual circumstances. Here's some helpful information. Determination of homelessness is made without regard to the reasons why they are homeless. If a parent refuses to complete the FAFSA, eligibility for unsubsidized federal direct loan no longer requires parents to cut off all financial support. And income earned from work may be set to 0 due to unemployment during a qualifying emergency. And here's information on where to get assistance. And if you have never visited the Financial Aid Toolkit for Professionals, you can get templates like this PowerPoint presentation, infographics, and even ideas on how to host an event here, going to the Financial Aid Toolkit. There was one thing that I didn't see in the presentation. So we are supposed to use the tax return from 2022. However, If the income changed because it decreased, then we can go into our institutions or our college's financial aid office to give them proof of the new lower income. If our income increased, we do not have to go in to report the increased income or the pay raise or the promotion that we got. Okay, Dr. Ybarra, we're ready for you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Ybarra, and I want to thank everybody for being here. I just want to introduce real quick Dr. Maria Marta Chavez, who just joined us. So Dr. Chavez, thank you for joining us. She's our CEO. We're going to go over a quick 6-minute presentation over the TASFA. So TASFA 101. So if you don't know what TASFA is, briefly, I'll give you an overview. It is a free application that collects information to help determine the eligibility for state or institutional financial aid programs by institutions of higher education in the state of Texas. Students that are classified as Texas residents who are not eligible to apply for FAFSA are able to complete the TASFA. You want to review the FAFSA filing requirements by visiting studentaid.gov or reaching out to your financial aid office who plan to attend for 24 to 25 school year. The federal act covers federal and state financial aid opportunities, and if you meet the FAFSA filing requirements, then you should complete a FAFSA. Every college is different, so you want to reach out to the financial aid office on campus. As an example, Dr. Jaimes, thank you for letting me know about this. Alamo colleges have their TASFA requirements listed in this format. So as you can tell, they have an electronic application for the school, but they also have a paper application that's also having to be filled out by the coordinating board, which is also listed right there. They give you step-by-step what you will need, the residency information, and when to apply. This is from the Alamo College's SAC website, but every community college in Texas and university in Texas is different. So you will not find all these instructions just as pretty formatted like this. So you have to do your research. Next up, here's a copy of the picture of the TASFA actual application, the paper one. The changes were made of January 3rd, 2024 for the 24-25 paper application. It's now available. The online TASFA has not been made available yet, and it's hopefully in the next couple of weeks it will be made available. In the chat, I'm going to go ahead and provide you the link to that that application itself in just a second. I'll do that right after I'm done here. And then we also have a couple of, hey, did you know these things? So in 2022 and 2023, TASFA awarded $1.2 billion in federal financial aid to over 200,000 students. The average award for those students was $6,000. The most common type of financial aid award through TASFA was a grant, which accounted for over 60% of all awards. Scholarships accounted for about 25% of awards, loans accounted for about 10%, and work study accounted for about 5% of awards. The majority of TASFA recipients were undergraduate students, which are about 75% of awards going to undergraduates, about 25% of awards going to graduates, and then the majority of TASFA recipients were students from low-income families, with about 70% of awards going to students with incomes below $50,000. So next up, we have about 20 different updates here, additions, and then some changes. All they did was they removed a couple of things about the untaxed income and additional student parent information, like the parent payments to tax-deferred pension, earnings from work under a cooperative educational program, example, housing, food, and other living allowances. And they also removed the untaxed income not reported, like workers' comp, disability, and untaxed foreign income not earned from work. They added spouses last, the thing's hiding this thing a little bit. Last and first name, pensions and rollovers, student and parent information. They also added the net profit loss for students and parents. They added a foreign earned income exclusion for students and parents. And then finally, they also updated the wording for the following questions: the student and parent marital status, the student and parent fighting status, dependent and dependent children in dependency section, and then determining student as an unaccompanied youth as homeless. Federal benefits received by adding coverage under a qualified health plan, earned income tax credit, and federal housing assistance. They also provided an update to the child support assets and student parent section. Finally, they also created an entirely new section called Federal Benefits and Household Information that was moved to a new family section called Family Information section, now located after the parent section. Terminology and instructions in this section were also updated to align with the FAFSA, questions number 95 through 101. If you have any questions on the TASFA, you can go to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's Financial Aid Services phone number at 844-792-2640 or submit an online inquiry through their Contact Us website, which I'll go ahead and put in the chat. Thank you very much for being here for both Dr. Jaimes and myself. Thank you, Dr. Duran, for being able to be there for us for this wonderful webinar. We have webinars every month, and then we also have what are called charlas, which are going to be geared towards different topics for student mental health, etc. We hope that you're able to attend those as well. I'll go ahead and pass the buck to Dr. Erin Duran to close us out.
Does anyone have any questions for either Dr. Ybarra or myself?
I think you were so thorough. I'm not sure there are any questions. I just wanted to say thank you to the both of you. Dr. Jaimes, your insight is just so extensive and so helpful to everyone present. Thank you for doing this. And thank you, Stacy, for coordinating the webinar. And we hope that all of you will join us in the future for more events. So
Thank you. I do see a question. Sorry to ask this. If parents don't see the IRS data retrieval information that is transferred into the FAFSA, what happens when they do not provide the correct tax information? So if there has been a problem with identity theft, then the IRS should have this information. But this is another situation where the family should talk to the institution's financial aid office. So I hope that answers that question.
And if you guys have questions about, like, after this is over, you can go to BARD on Google, B-A-R-D, and pop your question, because BARD is more advanced than ChatGPT when it knows about these kind of things. I know I see Natalie shaking his head. So Natalie, I know you know a lot about financial aid too. Do you have anything that you want to say about scholarships before we close up?
No, you actually, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
No, you guys covered a lot. I was actually interested in the TASFA because for my scholars, I actually am going to send them some stuff tomorrow. So thank you for that information. It was the first time I've heard about it, but I've never seen it. So I just want to thank you. And then I was curious about all the new changes in FAFSA as I'm going to get my bachelor's here next fall. So I was also interested into it. So thank you all for the information. It was great information.
Yes, thank you for joining us. If you are in San Antonio, we do have a FAFSA night coming up in partnership with Trellis on the evening of January 24th. And I'm trying to find the flyer here. And of course, now I can't find it. Darn it, where did I put it? FAFSA night right here. Okay, I just posted it in the chat. Again, this is in partnership with Trellis. We will be here on January 24th on the 5th floor of the Moody Learning Center from 4 to 7. We will have water and snacks, and this will be held in a lab. So we'll help families complete their FAFSA. The student will be able to log in, and then the contributor will be able to log in right after to complete their part. And I did share no, I did not. Did I? No. Let me share. If you have any questions about the FAFSA or about public service loan forgiveness, here's my email address. You may reach me at any time. Thank you all so much. Yes. Dr. Doran, do you want to say anything before we leave?
We have a question.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for attending. This was a really, really informative session. It is really impressive to hear how y'all know the ins and outs of this, especially given that there's been a lot of changes. If y'all have any questions or anything, you can reach out to Stacy or Joanne, and this will be put on our YouTube channel. So if you have any questions, if you don't already have the link, let me know and I can be sure to send that to y'all, just so you can come back and review this, or to send it to people on on your campuses, since it is so incredibly informative. And other than that, we will look forward to seeing you on February 15th for the next webinar.
Thank you. There is one more question in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
For the FAFSA night at San Antonio College, yes, we will provide computers, but if you have a mobile device, we can also assist you on your mobile device. The Better FAFSA is also compatible with your mobile device without an app. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
What a great job. I know. Bye.